a vast landscape that is still damaged, 12 years after one of the worst oil spills in history. Ogoniland was once an ecological sanctuary, before major leaks at an oil rig belonging to the Anglo-Dutch oil company Shell. In Bodo, people had lived off fishing for generations. Celestine Viula, nearing his 60s, has always lived by the water.
There is no means I can fish here. I am just like that in the hole, staying without doing anything. That is the cause of impoverishment. Somebody with family, wife and children, and have those who are depending on me. The source of income is killed off.
After the disasters of 2008 and 2009, the mangrove, the river and the creeks have become open graveyards for fishermen's boats. And here, no one can afford to go to the open sea, far from the polluted areas.
A fisherman can no longer build house. Fisherman find it so hard to feed. You go to the journey, you come back empty-handed. If you hire a boat, it means that you are coming back, you must find a way to borrow money in order to pay for the boat of that day.
Despite the oil slicks floating on the surface, some fishermen still cast their nets upon the contaminated water.
All the fishes you see depend on this mud. They eat the mud so that they can be alive. But one funny thing is that if you try now and see any fish that came from the sea and enter here now, the eye will swell up and all the tails will be half.
According to the United Nations Environment Programme, there are nearly 70 polluted sites. And everywhere, the same burnt-out, desolate landscape as in Kegbaradere, a village located near Bodo. Here, the ecosystem has been destroyed over dozens of hectares.
Christmas tree, this is the name that Shell gives that this technology. This is the source of this pollution. This is how every other 54 from which this state and of course the entire world feeds.
After an explosion at an oil facility in April 2009, dozens of people were caught in the fire. They burned to death. Chief Morgan, a resident of Kegbaradere, can't forget the horror.
What we saw from the village was a flame of fire into the sky. And the whole of this place, including the spill, the crude that spilled, all, because they are inflammable, all went into flame. And so our women, our children that were in their into their normal businesses of getting probably snails from our forest, or probably whatever, or firewood that they came for.
So far, the people of Kegbaradere have received nothing from Shell. The company refuses to acknowledge its responsibility. It claims the disaster was caused by sabotage. The battle for compensation has created collateral victims, like this blind woman who lost her husband. He was sentenced to death in 1995, at the same time as Ogoni leader Ken Saro-Wiwa and 7 other activists, for inciting murder.
Our brother Ken Saro-Wiwa and my husband died for the cause of the Ogoni struggle. Those at the forefront of the struggle should make sure the Nigerian government and Shell look into the Ogoni Bill of Rights, which Ken wrote, and do what is in it. If that's done, we'll be happy because we'll have finally got what belongs to us.
Since Ken Saro-Wiwa's death, others have taken up the fight against Shell. Like Fegalo Nsuke of the Movement for the Survival of the Ogoni People, or MOSOP, a movement seeking a fair distribution of resources. Fegalo Nsuke is supporting the widow Ewo and her children in her legal battle against the multinational. Unlike the other women who were compensated after their husbands were hanged, Blessing Iwao obtained nothing. At the time, Shell was accused of complicity with the government, so to avoid a major court case, the company chose to pay out a little more than 840,000 euros per family.
They were asking for just basic rights, just fair treatment. Because you want to continue, you want to sustain the repression, you kill them. The only consolation we do have is that their death is not in vain, and we have continued and sustained the struggle to ensure that their deaths can never be in vain.
Blessing Iwao's oldest son is following in his father's footsteps.
Cannot live muscle because this is what my father died for. If your father build a house and die, you have to live inside the house. You must stay inside your house. That is why I must follow muscle from now till the end to achieve what my father died for.
The death of Tuka's father devastated the family. Tuka was barely 10 years old when his father was hanged with Ken Saro-Wiwa. To make ends meet, he now works as a motorbike commercial driver.
Because of no support, no nothing from anywhere, no financial support that make us to be stranded. I am doing Okada. Even my own mother is begging from one churches to another before we eat.
It's like in the family.
30 years of repression, arrests, and internal divisions have exhausted MOSOP. But the organization remains committed to non-violence.
We need to teach the people that non-violence is a better option than the violent means. We don't have to... I understand that Nigeria today encourages violence. They encourage the violent method because when you take up arms against the state, that is when they call you and compensate you.
In Bori, on the 4th of January 1993, the Ogoni decided to stand up to Shell. The fishermen from Bodo, the current leader of MOSOP, and Emmanuel and Carla were present.
So we stood at that place. The women were out there, the dignitaries were out there, and the crowd took over this place. Some of them climbed this building to make sure they participate in Ogoni struggle. And from that day, Shell is no longer needed in Ogoni land. That remains till today.
Shell was forced to stop its activities, which caused major financial losses for the military dictatorship. In retaliation, the following year, it launched fierce reprisals against the Ogonis. Celestine Viula, an activist, was forced into hiding for several months.
I was a target even to be killed, and the community was no more preservable for me any longer. I made here my hideout. Only God knows what you pass through. They were trying to make sure they eliminate me alongside the others. The military may rape the women, torture you, they loot our properties, and they were burning houses. Those innocent people that were not campaigners of the struggle, once they look for those like me and could not be gotten, they transfer the aggression to whosoever they see. They don't mind even if you are killed.
Like most Ogoni, the Gabai family participated in the fight against Shell, but for other reasons. This centenarian and his son believed that the company was underpaying for the lease of their land. They won their case against Shell Nigeria.
We want Shell to pay for loss, the damage that they did. According to the judgment, they say Shell should pay us 1.5 billion naira. Shell said that they know that my father, they are on age, that they will refuse to pay us They know that my father cannot last for another 30 years old again. Before in 30 years, my father will die.
Our efforts to set up a meeting with representatives of Shell Nigeria were unsuccessful. The multinational would only agree to respond in writing.
The Shell Group has paid $380 million to the Ogoni Restoration Fund as part of the $900 million to be paid over a period of 5 years starting from 2018.
After the publication of a damning UN report in 2011, Shell agreed to pay about €340 million to a fund tasked with clearing up Ogoniland. But setting up the structure took a long time, and the cleanup operations only began 8 years later.
People may be impatient for lack of understanding as part of ignorance. They may be responsible for this impatience, and then the lack of awareness. So people need to be also educated and told exactly how the process runs.
But at this rate, Shell will not meet its cleanup schedule in Bodo, which could pave the way for a new lawsuit. It took a hard-fought battle for the villagers to get Shell to acknowledge its responsibility for the environmental disaster. Celestine Viula, the fisherman from Bodo, received a little less than €3,000, like its other 15,000 inhabitants. But this tiny compensation will not be enough to build a life for his children.
The youths that are here and the poor people, they have nothing to do. So it makes them to be hopeless because they have no one to fight for them. And that's why my dad is coming up with this talk now, to fight for them.
Young people in Ogoniland have only known this degraded environment where you can't fish or farm anymore. And that's the way things are likely to continue. According to Amnesty International, it will take a century for Ogoniland to become the sanctuary it once was.